If you listen carefully, most regret does not sound dramatic. It does not arrive with thunder. It does not always come after some spectacular collapse. More often, it sounds like a private sentence you whisper to yourself. Years too late, I knew. I knew this needed to change. I knew I was wasting time. I knew I was shrinking. I knew I was letting comfort decide the shape of my life. And still, I waited. That is one of the hardest truths a person can face. Not that life hid the lesson from them, but that they kept postponing what they already understood. When people hear the word attractive, they usually think about appearance first. They think about style, body language, status, charm. But some of the most attractive people you will ever meet are not the loudest, not the prettiest, not the most polished. They are the most settled. There is something arresting about a human being who is not leaking energy in every direction, a person who is not frantic for approval, not reactive, not melodramatic, not begging life to be easier before they become stronger. Their presence lands differently, their words carry weight, their silence is not empty, their attention feels expensive. That kind of attractiveness is rare now because inner steadiness is rare now. We live in an age of exposure without depth, stimulation without meaning, expression without discipline. People confuse being seen with being respected. They confuse busyness with purpose. They confuse emotional impulsiveness with authenticity. And then they wonder why they feel so scattered, so ordinary, so forgettable. But attractiveness, in the deepest sense, has always belonged to character. Not the kind of character people advertise, the kind they reveal under inconvenience, under boredom, under rejection, under delay, under the daily friction of being alive. That is where Stoicism enters, not as a museum piece, not as a collection of quotes for wounded egos, but as a confrontation, a stripping away, a return to reality. Because the Stoics understood something most people only learn after wasting years. What makes a person compelling is not how intensely they demand attention, but how cleanly they govern themselves. And most people learn that too late. They learn too late that hesitation is often fear in formal clothing. They learn too late that emotional chaos is not depth. They learn too late that a weak relationship with time poisons everything else. They learn too late that ego makes people ugly long before age ever does. They learn too late that peace cannot be borrowed from comfort. Recently, I've been reflecting on how much of life is lost this way, not through some major visible failure, but through quiet delay, through wasted mornings, through half-honest self-talk, through the strange habit of assuming there will always be more time to become who you already know you should be. And maybe that is why this topic matters more than it seems, because these are not just habits that make you more attractive to other people. They make you more solid in your own eyes. They make your face calmer, your speech cleaner, your choices sharper, your standards harder to manipulate. They take a person from drifting to deliberate. And when that shift happens, people feel it immediately, even if they cannot explain why. So what follows is not a list in the shallow sense. It is one reckoning, moving through 10 small habits that change the atmosphere around a human being. Tiny habits, severe effects. And the tragedy is that most people wait until pain educates them. By then, the sand is already lower in the glass. Why people learn too late? People do not usually arrive late to wisdom because wisdom is complicated. They arrive late because comfort is persuasive. A person tells himself he is being careful, when really he is delaying a necessary decision. He tells himself he is resting, when really he is hiding in distraction. He tells himself he is just being honest about his feelings, when really he is indulging emotional habits that keep him weak. He stays busy enough to avoid reflection, stimulated enough to avoid grief, entertained enough to avoid grief, entertained enough to avoid responsibility. And because nothing explodes immediately, he mistakes the absence of disaster for proof that the delay is harmless. That is how years disappear. Modern life makes this easier than ever. You could now spend whole days in a state that feels active while changing almost nothing, answering messages, watching other people live, taking in opinions, managing impressions, performing concern, numbing discomfort in elegant ways. It all looks like movement. Much of it is drift. One of the most dangerous illusions is the illusion of endless emotional credit. People act as if they can keep betraying their own standards, postponing their own growth, and somehow return to themselves later without cost. But the cost is real. It accumulates in the nervous system, in the face, in the posture, in the way a person starts speaking with less certainty because they no longer trust themselves. This is what many people feel but cannot name. They are tired not only because life is hard, but because self-betrayal is exhausting. I used to justify hesitation as thoughtfulness. I told myself I was being measured, responsible, mature, but often it was just fear disguised as caution. It was easier to stay undecided than to accept the burden of action, easier to keep thinking than to let reality judge me. A lot of people are doing the same thing right now. They are not confused. They are postponing contact with the truth, and the truth, delayed long enough, begins to feel like accusation. The Stoic hourglass. The Stoic hourglass. The Stoics were not obsessed with death because they were morbid. They were obsessed with death because they wanted to rescue life from triviality. Marcus Aurelius kept reminding himself that he could leave life at any moment, not to become gloomy, but to stop negotiating with the unnecessary. Seneca warned that it is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it. Epictetus kept separating what is within our control from what is not, because most human misery grows in that confusion. Taken together, their philosophy is an hourglass turned over in your hands. Look at it honestly, and excuses begin to look childish. You do not control how long you are here. You do not control whether others admire you, understand you, stay loyal to you, reward you, or speak fairly of you. You do not control the world's mood. But you do control the use of your attention, the quality of your conduct, the shape of your habits, and the standard you submit yourself to when no one is watching. This is where attractiveness changes from performance to substance. A person becomes magnetic when they stop trying to decorate disorder and start governing themselves at the root. When they stop asking, "How do I seem?" and start asking, "What am I becoming?" Stoicism is not coldness. It is clarity under pressure. It is the refusal to let delay harden into identity. And with that, the first habit appears. Habit 1. Stop explaining yourself too kindly. In private, one of the least attractive things a person can do is lie to themselves in a flattering tone. Not the obvious lies, the respectable ones. I'm just overwhelmed. I haven't started because timing matters. I'm not avoiding it, I'm processing. This is just how I am. Sometimes those sentences are true. Often they are anesthesia. The first tiny Stoic habit is brutally simple. Speak to yourself with accuracy, not cruelty. Accuracy. Most people do not suffer from a lack of information. They suffer from softened interpretation. They reframe every weakness into a temporary exception, every compromise into a complex situation, every repeated failure into a personality trait that should be accommodated rather than corrected. But a person becomes instantly more attractive when there is no fog between who they are and what they know. When they can say without drama, "No, I am avoiding this, I am feeding this problem, I am helping create what I claim to hate." That honesty creates power, because vague people cannot change precisely. Marcus Aurelius did not write to himself like a man seeking comfort. He wrote like a man trying to remain awake. That is the habit. Wakefulness in language, a refusal to narcotize yourself with interpretations that preserve ego but cost growth. In modern life, this may look small, catching yourself when you say you are too busy to train, when the truth is that you gave your best attention to nonsense, admitting that your frustration is not caused by the world alone but by your lack of boundaries. seeing that what you call confusion is often reluctance. This habit makes you attractive because truth has a posture. People can feel when someone is standing on something real inside themselves, and once a person stops lying softly in private, the next thing they notice is how often their emotions try to take command. Habit 2. Insert a pause between feeling and performance. A turning point for me was learning to ask in the moment of irritation, is this worth my peace? Or is this just my ego asking to be fed? That single question changes the temperature of a life, because so much unattractiveness is not about appearance at all. It is about unmanaged reactivity, the quick defensiveness, the sharp reply, the need to prove, correct, display, retaliate, the inability to let a small offense die without ceremony. People think emotional intensity makes them seem passionate. Often it makes them seem unstable. The Stoics understood that the first movement of emotion is not always voluntary. Anger rises, fear appears, embarrassment burns. But what follows that is where character enters. Do you fuse with the feeling, or do you examine it? Do you become its instrument or its observer? Epictetus would say you are disturbed not by events, but by your judgments about them. That is not a denial of emotion. It is an invitation to authority. The tiny habit is this: pause before you perform your feeling, before the text, before the look, before the sarcasm, before the explanation, before the digital outburst that buys you 10 seconds of relief and hours of self-disgust. Just pause. In that pause, attractiveness is born because composure is visible. It changes the voice, the eyes, the pacing. It tells the world, and more importantly tells you, that you are not available for emotional conscription. This does not make you numb. It makes you selective, and selective people are powerful because they do not spend themselves cheaply. From there, something deeper becomes possible, no longer living at the mercy of mood. Habit 3. Do one small hard thing, regardless of how you feel. Many people live as if mood is a legal authority. If they feel clear, they move. If they feel motivated, they begin. If they feel confident, they speak. If they feel inspired, they become disciplined for 6 hours and call it transformation. Then the mood leaves, and so does the version of them that was supposedly serious. This is why they drift. The third habit is almost invisible from the outside, but it changes a person at the root. Every day, do one small hard thing without consulting your mood first. Get up when you said you would. Finish the message you have been avoiding. Clean the room. Train. Read the difficult page. Make the call. Sit in silence instead of reaching for noise. Tiny acts of self-command accumulate into visible dignity. What most people learn too late is that discipline is not impressive because it is intense. It is impressive because it is unromantic. It continues when feelings do not cooperate. It makes no speech. It simply keeps the agreement. And people are deeply attracted to those who keep agreements with themselves. Why? Because consistency radiates safety and strength. It tells others this person is not built on weather. This person has structure. Seneca wrote that we suffer more in imagination than in reality. Much of the suffering around discipline comes from anticipating effort as if it were punishment. But action, once begun, is often cleaner than avoidance. The drag was mental. The resistance was theatrical. The self-respect on the other side was real. A life begins to sharpen here. But then comes the next confrontation. Time. Habit 4. Start before you feel ready. There are lives quietly ruined by over-preparation. Not because preparation is wrong, but because many people use it to avoid exposure. They keep researching, planning, refining, waiting, organizing, talking about what they will do, never quite stepping into the arena where action could embarrass them. They call it prudence. Sometimes it is cowardice with excellent grammar. The fourth habit is to begin slightly before your mind grants permission. Not recklessly, not stupidly, but before the feeling of perfect readiness arrives, because it rarely does. This is one of the great adult humiliations, realizing how much time was lost waiting to feel differently before doing what needed to be done. The attractive person is not the one who never doubts. It is the one who can move with some doubt still present. The one who does not make uncertainty the ruler of their decisions. In a distracted age, starting is a moral act, because every day the world offers you softer substitutions for your own life. Scroll instead of create, fantasize instead of build, discuss instead of commit. You can spend years near your purpose without touching it. The Stoics cut through this with brutal simplicity. The task is in front of you. Do it. That is dignity. That is beauty in motion. And once you learn to start, another lesson arrives right behind it. Habit 5. Close. Small open loops. Quickly, a person does not become heavy only from major tragedies. They become heavy from accumulation, unsent messages, unmade decisions, half-finished promises, avoided repairs, lingering clutter, delayed apologies, minor obligations left rotting at the edges of consciousness. Each one seems small. Together, they create psychic drag. They occupy background attention. They make a person feel older than they are, more burdened than they need to be, less present than they could be. So here is the habit. When something small can be resolved cleanly, resolve it. Not everything immediately, not neurotically, but promptly where possible. Put the dish away, answer the email, fold the shirt, clarify the plan. Say no instead of drifting. End what is over, repair what is yours to repair. This habit sounds domestic. It is actually philosophical, because disorder is often delayed, honesty made visible. People learn too late that the way they handle small unfinished things is often the way they handle life itself. Indirectly, mood first, tomorrow-oriented, hoping friction will dissolve if ignored, but things left open do not disappear. They extract rent. A person becomes more attractive when their life has less leakage, when there is less chaos trailing behind them, when their environment, schedule, and speech show evidence of internal order, not perfection, order. Habit 6. Make discomfort a daily appointment. Most people say they want confidence. What they often want is confidence without exposure. They want self-respect without inconvenience, peace without discipline, strength without repetition, admiration without sacrifice. But the body and mind do not believe what the mouth says. They believe what the life repeatedly proves. So the 6th habit is to make discomfort normal in small doses. Take the colder walk. Sit with the urge instead of obeying it instantly. Train when it would be easier not to. Speak the honest sentence. Put the phone down and meet the silence. Eat a little less indulgently. Stay in the difficult conversation long enough to be truthful. Not because suffering is noble in itself, because voluntary discomfort teaches the nervous system that difficulty is survivable. It lowers the drama of effort. It breaks the childlike expectation that life should always feel smooth before we act well. This is where a man, or any serious person, begins to carry a different kind of authority. Not loudness, not hardness for show, just the unmistakable stability of someone who has stopped negotiating with every momentary preference. People are drawn to that because it feels rare and costly. And now the script turns outward to the places where ego, disappointment, and relationships either refine a person or deform them. Habit 7. Stop auditioning for approval. There is a sadness in many adults that has nothing to do with failure and everything to do with performance. They are exhausted because they are always adjusting. Speaking to be liked. Posting to be a find. Withholding to seem unbothered. Over-explaining to avoid misreading. Becoming a version of themselves that can pass through the room with minimal disapproval. This is a terrible way to live. And the tragedy is that many people do not notice how much energy they lose this way until they are years into a life that no longer feels like theirs. The 7th habit is to stop auditioning, not to become arrogant, not to become antisocial. but to stop offering your personality to the crowd as a product under review. Epictetus warned against placing your good in what other people control. Approval is one of the most addictive forms of that mistake. The more you need it, the less attractive you become. Because neediness, even sophisticated neediness, bends the spine. Real attractiveness has edges. It knows how to disappoint. It is willing to be misunderstood when the alternative is self-betrayal. It does not explain every boundary. It does not panic when someone withdraws warmth as punishment for your independence. It does not confuse popularity with alignment. This habit becomes visible immediately, in the way you speak a little more slowly, in the way your no stops apologizing for existing, in the way you stop chasing responsiveness from people who enjoy being chased. And once you stop begging to be chosen, you are finally ready to learn what to do with disappointment. Habit 8. Do not spend your life collecting emotional debts. Some people age in resentment before they age in years. They keep ledgers in the dark. Who failed them? Who overlooked them? Who did not repay loyalty with loyalty? Who was admired more? Who got away with more? Who got away with more? Who left? Understood their value? Who left? Who stayed and still disappointed them? This is one of the most corrosive habits a person can carry, because resentment feels powerful while making you weaker every day. The Stoics were severe about this. You cannot keep your dignity if your inner life is run by other people's failures. You cannot be free while your mood remains tethered to what someone else should have done. You cannot become attractive while radiating unresolved grievance. The 8th habit is this. Stop invoicing the world for the pain of being human. Yes, some people did you wrong. Yes, some losses were unfair. Yes, disappointment can cut deeper than anger admits. But eventually the question changes. Not what did they owe me? What am I becoming by carrying this? That is the adult question. This habit does not mean you return where you were harmed. It does not mean passivity. It means release without self-erasure. It means learning to conserve your life force for what can still be built. There is something profoundly attractive about a person who has suffered and yet is not broadcasting bitterness as identity. Someone who has boundaries without poison, memory without obsession, discernment without contempt. That kind of person has been humbled by loss and improved by it, which leads to the hardest lessons of all. Habit 9. Remember death. Briefly, daily. Most people keep death in the abstract because abstraction allows postponement. As long as mortality remains theoretical, priorities remain negotiable. Petty conflict stays inflated. Trivial entertainment keeps its spell. Vanity keeps making absurd demands. But when death becomes emotionally real, not morbidly, just honestly, life reorganizes itself. The 9th habit is to remember briefly each day that this ends, not someday in the poetic sense. Actually ends. One day you will do ordinary things for the last time. Drink water, tie your shoes, hear a familiar voice, walk through a doorway, sit in a room you think you still have time to change inside of. Marcus Aurelius used this awareness to strip life of pretense. And that is exactly what it does. It makes attractiveness less cosmetic and more existential. You stop asking what will impress and start asking what will matter. You stop building your days as if they are recyclable. The person who keeps death in view becomes calmer, not more frantic, because urgency, when healthy, simplifies. It removes excess. It sharpens love. It makes discipline feel less like punishment and more like respect for the fact that you were given a day at all. And this is where many people feel the knife, because they realize they have not merely been wasting time. They have been spending life on things unworthy of a mortal being. That realization hurts. It is supposed to, because the final habit asks the deepest question. Habit 10. Live so that your presence leaves things better. When people think about meaning, they often think too grandly: legacy, impact, recognition, achievement, achievement, achievement. But meaning begins much lower to the ground. It begins with whether your presence improves the environments you enter, whether people feel steadier, clearer, more honest, more respected, more awake after contact with you, whether your work is done with care, whether your room, your speech, your promises, your conduct, your attention leave things in better order than your impulses would have. The 10th habit is simple enough to miss. Wherever possible, leave people, places, and moments better than you found them, not for praise, for alignment. Because peace cannot be borrowed from comfort. It is earned through congruence, through living in such a way that your inner standards and outer behavior no longer fight each other. This is the most attractive thing of all, not charisma. Congruence, a person who does not need to advertise their depth because it is visible in their manner, in what they tolerate, in what they refuse, in the fact that they are not just intense in thought, but reliable in conduct. This is how meaning becomes daily instead of abstract. You become someone whose life is not merely consumed, but shaped. The reckoning. And this is where everything gathers. Most regret is not created in one catastrophe. It is created in repetition. In the same excuse spoken 100 times, in the same avoided conversation, in the same compromise made because it felt easier, in the same morning handed over to distraction, in the same emotional reflex obeyed until it became personality, in the same quiet assumption that there would always be more time. That was the turning point for me, realizing that regret rarely arrives dramatically. It builds in silence, through ignored instincts, repeated compromises, the slow normalization of a life that falls beneath your own standard. That realization is painful because it removes fantasy, but it is also merciful. Because once you see what has been costing you your life, you no longer have to call it confusion. You no longer have to pretend you are waiting for the right season. You no longer have to romanticize the very patterns that are making you smaller. You can finally say, enough. Pause. Enough of pretending my hesitation is wisdom. Enough of feeding my ego and calling it self-expression. Enough of surrendering days to noise and then wondering why I feel weak. Enough of expecting peace from a life built on delay. There is grief in that moment. There should be. You are grieving not only wasted time, but the versions of yourself that might have existed if truth had been obeyed earlier. But do not stay there, because what can still be saved is more important than what was lost. The life you must not postpone after these lessons. A stronger person does not become perfect. They become honest, faster. They notice when their mind begins bargaining with what must be done, and they shorten the negotiation. They stop treating mood as command. They stop converting discomfort into emergency. They stop offering their self-respect to the opinions of people who have not earned authority over their life. They become cleaner with time. They know an hour is not cheap. They know attention is not an endless resource. They know that a wasted morning is not a minor thing when repeated for years. So they build days that can be inhabited with dignity. They move first on what matters. They close loops. They tell the truth sooner. They rest without hiding. They work without dramatizing. They also become quieter inside. Not because life stops being difficult, but because they stop multiplying difficulty with interpretation, ego, and avoidance. Fear still appears, anger still appears, sadness still appears, but these states no longer seize the wheel so easily. There is space now, a governing presence, a private authority, and in ordinary life, that changes everything. It changes how they enter a room, how they answer a message, how they carry disappointment, how long they tolerate self-contempt, how they hold eye contact, how they keep their word, how they leave when a situation insults their dignity, how they stay when duty asks something uncomfortable of them. This is not flashy. It is better than flashy. It is real. And real has become rare enough to feel almost sacred. That is why these habits make a person instantly more attractive, not because they teach performance, but because they reduce inner contradiction. They gather scattered energy back into character. They make a person look less hungry, less chaotic, less available for manipulation. They put gravity into the voice and steadiness into the face. People notice. But more importantly, you notice that it becomes easier to trust yourself, easier to sit alone, easier to act without ceremony, easier to let trivial things die, easier to respect the person in the mirror because that person is no longer constantly negotiating against what is right. And that may be the deepest form of attractiveness available to any human being, to become someone whose presence is shaped by principle more than appetite, someone who no longer needs constant stimulation to feel alive, someone who can be calm without being passive, disciplined without being brittle, serious without becoming cold, someone who knows the hourglass is running and therefore lives in a way that honors the sand that remains. The final sentence. If this resonated, like the video and in the comments, tell me which lesson hit hardest. Because sometimes naming the truth is the first act of no longer running from it. And if you want more grounded Stoic philosophy and self-mastery content, subscribe, because wisdom learned too late is one of life's quietest tragedies. But wisdom lived now today, in your habits, in your speech, in your standards, in the next decision you make while no one is watching, that is still power. So do not wait to become the person you already know. Respect requires. The most attractive thing about you will never be what you display. It will be what you refuse to postpone.